Larry Page looked up from his dinner and said quietly, "In 1996, I had an idea that seemed impossible: to download the entire internet and rank every web page by importance." He paused, adjusting his glasses. "My Stanford professors thought I was crazy. Sergey thought it was interesting but impossible. But I knew that if we could solve this one problem, we could organize all human knowledge." What he told me next about the algorithm that changed everything will blow your mind. Tonight, I'm having dinner with Larry Page, co-founder of Google and one of the most influential technologists of our time. We're at a quiet restaurant in Palo Alto, just miles from where Google was born, in a Stanford dorm room. He's about to share the story of how an impossible PhD thesis became the foundation for organizing the world's information. "Take me back to that Stanford dorm room," I said. "What made you think downloading the entire internet was even possible?" Page's eyes lit up with the same curiosity I imagine he had as a 23-year-old graduate student. "I was working on my PhD in computer science, trying to figure out what to research. I kept thinking about how the web was growing exponentially, but there was no good way to navigate it or understand what was important." What was the web like in 1996? Chaotic. Millions of pages with no organization, no quality control, no way to separate valuable information from junk. Existing search engines like AltaVista and Lycos were basically keyword matching, primitive and often useless. So you decided to solve that? I decided to think about it differently. Instead of just indexing text, what if we could understand the relationships between pages? What if we could use the link structure of the web to determine importance? The waiter brought our wine. Page took a thoughtful sip before continuing. "The insight came from academia. When professors write papers, they cite other important papers. The most cited papers are usually the most important. I thought, what if web links work the same way? That became PageRank?" Exactly. If important websites link to your page is probably important too. If unimportant sites link to you, that means less. We could create a ranking system based on the web's own structure. But downloading the entire internet, how is that even technically possible? Page smiled. "It wasn't, initially, but I've always believed that if something seems impossible, you just haven't figured out the right approach yet. We started small, maybe a few million pages, and figured out how to scale." "When did Sergey Brin get involved?" "Sergey was assigned to show me around Stanford when I was visiting. We disagreed about almost everything, which made our conversations incredibly productive. When I explained the web crawling idea, he immediately saw both the potential and the massive technical challenges." "What were the biggest challenges?" "Everything. Storage. How do you store terabytes of web data when most computers had megabytes? Processing. How do you analyze billions of links efficiently? Bandwidth. How do you download millions of pages without crashing servers?" "How did you solve those problems?" "Innovation and desperation. We built our own servers from cheap components. We wrote algorithms that could process link graphs efficiently. We were basically inventing distributed computing concepts that didn't exist yet." "When did you realize you had something special?" Page paused, remembering. 1997, when we first ran PageRank on a substantial portion of the web. The results were shockingly good. For the first time, when you searched for something, the most relevant and authoritative pages appeared at the top. Give me an example. Search for university on other engines, you'd get random school websites. Search on our system, you'd get Harvard, Stanford, MIT, the universities that other universities actually link to as examples of excellence. When did it become Google? That's Sergey's story. We needed a name for the search engine. Someone suggested Googol, the mathematical term for 10 to the 100th power. We liked the idea of organizing vast amounts of information. But when we went to register the domain, we misspelled it as Google. And you kept the misspelling? The domain was available, the name was catchy, and honestly, we were graduate students focused on technology, not branding. Sometimes the best decisions are accidental. Our appetizers arrived. Page had ordered something simple, staying true to his reputation for minimalism. When did you realize Google could become a business? 1998. We were getting thousands of queries per day on our Stanford servers, but we had no way to monetize it. More importantly, Stanford was getting uncomfortable with the traffic and resource usage. What changed? We met Andy Bechtolsheim, co-founder of Sun Microsystems. We gave him a demo of our search technology. Before we finished explaining, he wrote us a check for $100,000 made out to Google Inc. But Google Inc. didn't exist yet. Exactly. We had to incorporate the company just to cash the check. That's when we realized we weren't just working on a research project. We were building a company. What was the early business model? We had no business model initially. We were engineers who had built something useful, but we didn't know how to make money from it. We considered licensing our technology to other companies. What changed your mind? We realized that if we licensed PageRank to existing search engines, they would improve, but the technology wouldn't reach its full potential. We needed to control the entire user experience to do search right. When did advertising become the model? 2000 to 2001. We were burning cash quickly and needed revenue. Other search engines were cluttering their results with banner ads and paid placements. We thought that was terrible for users. So how did you make advertising work? AdWords. Instead of polluting search results, we created separate, clearly labeled ads that were actually relevant to what people were searching for. If someone searches for running shoes, they see ads for running shoes, not random banners. That seems obvious now. It wasn't obvious then. Most people thought internet advertising meant intrusive pop-ups and irrelevant banners. We proved that advertising could be useful if it was targeted and relevant. The main course arrived. Paige had ordered grilled salmon, keeping things straightforward. When did you realize Google would become as big as it is today? Gradually, then suddenly. Around 2002 to 2003, we were processing hundreds of millions of queries daily. But the real indicator was when people started using Google as a verb. What did that tell you? That we had become essential infrastructure. When your product becomes a verb, you've transcended being a company. You've become part of how people think and communicate. Let's talk about going public. That was a big decision. 2004. We had grown to thousands of employees and needed capital for expansion, but we were nervous about losing control of our vision to short-term investor pressures. How did you handle that? Dual-class share structure. Sergey and I retained voting control while raising capital. We also wrote a letter to potential investors explaining that we would prioritize long-term value over short-term profits. That was controversial. Very controversial. Wall Street doesn't like it when founders retain control after going public. But we had seen too many companies lose their way after IPOs. We wanted to preserve Google's ability to take risks and think long-term. What risks were you thinking about? Everything we're doing now, YouTube, Android, Chrome, self-driving cars, artificial intelligence, quantum computing. None of these were obvious revenue generators when we started them. Speaking of those projects, when did Google become Alphabet? 2015. We realized we were no longer just a search company. We were working on problems spanning multiple industries: transportation, healthcare, energy, artificial intelligence. The Alphabet structure lets each area focus on its specific challenges. What's your current role at Alphabet? CEO, focusing on our most ambitious projects: Waymo for autonomous vehicles, Verily for life sciences, DeepMind for artificial intelligence. These are all attempts to use technology to solve problems that affect billions of people. Let's talk about artificial intelligence. You've been investing in AI for years. Paige's expression became more intense. AI is the most important technology humans will ever develop. It has the potential to solve problems we can't even imagine: disease, climate change, poverty, education, but also potential risks. Absolutely. Any powerful technology can be misused. That's why we've been so focused on AI safety research, making sure we develop these systems responsibly. What's your vision for AI's future? Artificial intelligence should augment human intelligence, not replace it. Imagine having a personal assistant that knows everything, can help you learn anything, can solve complex problems instantly. That's the positive vision. What about the concerns that AI will eliminate jobs? Technology has always eliminated some jobs while creating new ones. The printing press eliminated scribes but created publishers, writers, editors. AI will eliminate routine tasks but create opportunities we can't yet imagine. How do you stay innovative after all these years? By staying curious and surrounding myself with people who disagree with me. The moment you think you have all the answers, you stop learning. What drives you now? The same thing that drove me in 1996, the belief that technology can organize information and solve problems at a scale that was previously impossible. We've organized web information. Now we're working on organizing all human knowledge. What does that mean practically? Imagine asking any question and getting not just answers, but understanding. How do I cure cancer? How do I solve climate change? How do I build a sustainable city? AI systems that can process all human knowledge and help us find solutions. That sounds like science fiction. So did downloading the entire internet in 1996. The difference between science fiction and reality is usually just time and engineering effort. What advice do you give to young entrepreneurs? Pick big problems. Don't start a company just to make money. Start a company to solve problems that matter. If you succeed, the money will follow. What about technical advice? Learn to think at scale. Most problems that seem impossible are just engineering challenges that require new approaches. Don't accept that something can't be done. Figure out how to do it. Any regrets about how Google evolved? I wish we had moved faster on some initiatives. We could have developed Android earlier, invested in AI sooner, tackled climate change more aggressively. Time is the scarcest resource. What's your biggest concern about the future? That we'll solve technical problems faster than we solve social and political problems. Technology is advancing exponentially, but human institutions change slowly. That gap could create instability. How do we address that? Education, transparency, and inclusive development. We need to make sure the benefits of technological progress are widely shared, not concentrated among a few people or companies. Final question. If you could go back to 1996 and give your graduate student self one piece of advice, what would it be? Paige smiled. Think even bigger. I thought downloading the internet was ambitious, but I was still thinking too small. Don't just solve the problem in front of you, solve the problem behind the problem. What do you mean? I wanted to organize web information, but the real problem was organizing all human knowledge and making it accessible to everyone. If I had understood that from the beginning, we might have gotten here faster. As dinner concluded, Paige reflected on the journey from impossible PhD thesis to organizing the world's information. The most important lesson from building Google is that impossible problems are usually just poorly understood problems. When you break them down into smaller pieces and apply persistent effort, most impossible things become inevitable. This evening with Larry Page reminded me that the greatest technological advances often start with someone willing to pursue an idea that everyone else considers impossible. His journey from downloading the internet to organizing human knowledge shows that the most audacious goals often yield the most transformative results. Don't forget to subscribe and check out the other videos to hear the most private dinner conversations where billionaires reveal their deepest secrets. Which part inspired you the most? Drop it in the comments. Let's figure out how to become billionaires together.